All right, welcome. Um, Welcome to another installment of the OSO Demo Day. We have some pretty exciting stuff. I feel like today is the first time we're really starting to show more of the AI-related stuff that we've been working on, so I'm excited for that. I would be down for you to go first if that's not putting you on the spot too much, Carl. Or I could go first if that's easier if you're not ready. You're on mute right now.
Yeah, I could do it. I'm just finishing up one little thing. I'll queue it up.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, sorry. Cool. So really simple first thing that I want to show. And I want other people on the team to understand how to use this as well. So I'm, not the only one working on it. But we have a new status page. It's status.opensource.observer. You can subscribe for email updates. So, but we already get the email updates. If you're on the internal mailing list, then you'll get the updates already. But for anybody external, they can also subscribe to when we go down. Hopefully it's not too often. Yeah, I mean, our uptime has been decent so far. I think the biggest thing I wanted, which is why I paid for it, is this. So now we can also do a real query against, GraphQL or our API or against PyOSO and see when the API is actually not responding properly. And I just want to walk people through how to set this up in case you have, Javi or Evan or somebody else creates a new endpoint and you need to figure out yeah, how to add it. So let me log in and just show you what it looks like on the other side. So we use a service called Uptime Robot. It's pretty nice. I like it. I've used a lot of these in my day, and this one's pretty decent. Password is in 1Password, so y'all should have access. And what's really nice about it is you can, this is where you can set up the status pages. We currently have two, status.opensource.observer as www.opensource.observer/status. I don't know. We'll get rid of one of them eventually. I think right now they point to the same thing. The main thing you want to do is go into here and configure monitors. So you can create a new monitor, or I'll just show you how one of these is already set up. So if you go to the GraphQL one, for example, you'll see, this is where it's keeping track of response times. It's not always perfectly responsive. What's nice is that it's doing real queries, right? So these are taking 100 milliseconds each. And then I'll show you what it looks like under the hood. So under the hood, you give it a URL, notification, monitor interval. And then if you go to advanced settings, now that we're paying for it, you can also, do real HTTP requests. So previously you could only do head requests. Now you can do GET requests or POST requests or whatever. And you can tell it what status code it should expect. And so here we're just fetching 10 arbitrary metrics. And yeah, that's it. So really simple, but I want us to just be a little bit more diligent about keeping tabs on how our service is running. This is one step on the way there. Any questions about Uptime Robot? Cool. Pretty straightforward. The next thing is just an FYI for people, because I know things have been thrashing a little bit. So previously we had this metrics data set, and I deleted it. So you'll notice that it's not there anymore. And now in the OSO data set, this is the BigQuery exporter that Javi wrote. So thank you, Javi, for writing that. I just made I just redirected things to here. So these are all the metrics, and we should be able to index or now when you run the BigQuery export job, Evan, you may not have seen this before, but if you ever need to run this, this is where you do it. If you go to BigQuery metrics, I thought I renamed this to BigQuery export. It might be BigQuery export in the future. If you click on this and you materialize it, this should go to the OSO data set now in BigQuery. So it's where it should be. there is one bug that some of these tables, particularly time series metrics by artifact, is too big. And I think BigQuery has a 10,000 file limit on import. So we just have to add some pagination. I filed an issue, tagged you on it, Javi, if you have any questions.
Yep. It's on my list. Like, yeah, I'll implement it shortly.
All right, no worries, no rush. It's honestly, it's yeah, not high priority. So I just wanted to make you aware. So that is that. And then the last thing I was going to show is post hog. So you know, if people haven't played with product analytics before, I think like how could I just get a rough show of hands if people played with like mixed panel amplitude post hog stuff before? If not, I might just give like a really quick product overview of how it works in the context of the data that we collect. Would that be helpful? Okay. If you've never used product analytics before, this is gonna it's gonna be a little startling how much data we collect. And I just want to remind everybody that you know, we're an open source company, we're responsible, we're socially responsible. All this stuff, you know, follows best practice industry practices. Everybody in the industry does stuff like this now. And everybody follows EU GDPR and whatnot. So one of the things, you know, it does respect ad blockers. So if you block ads, you can block it. This is also on my queue, is to add a little toggle in the settings page so people can opt out of post hog capturing. But you know, if you're watching this live stream, hopefully you're a supporter of us, and hopefully for us, you know, you'll opt in, because it just makes it so much easier for us to improve the product. So you know, really would appreciate for folks to opt in, especially people on this call right now, so that, you know, we can fix things when things go wrong. So okay, so this is post hog. Why do we decide on post hog? Let me just give like a quick overview of like a little bit of market research that I did. We used to use segment and amplitude, and the pricing on both of these has just gotten bonkers, particularly segment. And so I spent a while just tearing all of it out. Like I just tore all of that code out and just instrumented post hog directly. One of the reasons why I like post hog is because it's open core. So, you know, there is this repo that I really like. They also have really good content marketing, which I talk about all the time. But yeah, it's open core, it's in Ethos, and their free tier is significantly better, like way better than almost everybody else that's out there. So you can track 1 million events for free per month. Their web analytics is pretty good. Their session replay is cheaper than most other session replay story things. Their error tracking, you know, we still use Sentry for a lot of things, but they have a better free tier than even Sentry for error tracking. So overall, like, much better free product. Very happy with it. Let me start over with the product overview. So all of you guys should have access to this already. If you don't, let me know and I'll invite you. It's all in the OSO project. Easiest thing, first thing, so you do have notebooks, Carl, you're gonna love that. You have embedded notebooks if you want to do any data science internally. We do also have the ability to create dashboards. We have 0 dashboards right now. I'm working on it, but we should have some product dashboards here shortly. And also activity is really helpful, particularly for debugging, because I can actually go in and see every single event in reverse chronological order. And let's say, you know, I'm wondering, okay, why is, you know, this event not coming in? Well, okay, have I seen any of these? Okay, sorry, I should not actually show real user data. But like, yeah, there's one that I think Carl did recently, right? And then you can expand it and you can see everything about everything that we're instrumenting. So that includes location, that includes IP address, that includes, yeah, I mean, and then we also have like metadata on the bottom. So you can see here that I inserted an API key and it was, you know, successful. So that's like debugging, right? If I can't see what I expect to see. Then I can go into like web analytics. Web analytics is really useful. It'll look similar if you use Google Analytics before, but you can see like how many people are visiting the page, how many sessions exist, where they're bouncing, aka leaving. You can see what pages they're going to. You can see where they're coming from, like whether it's direct or through search. what kind of devices they're accessing us from, what kind of localities they're coming from, all sorts of stuff. This is the state of the art and like what analytics looks like. I also turned on Web Vitals, which is helpful for us for performance optimization. So if you're not familiar with Web Vitals, it is like the industry standard and how people think about performance. You can Google what these mean, but oh, it tells you what they mean right here. So like these are the things that roughly tell you like these are the things you want to improve perception of how your website is performing. And so, for example, this one we're doing pretty poorly on right now. First contentful paint basically is like, when is the first time I see anything like some initial text, so, you know, or whatever, or a non-white background. Right now it's about 4 seconds for us to get to first contentful paint. We should improve that. There's other things like layout shift. Like you ever go to a web page and things just start moving around as it loads. You know, this measures that because you're trying to reduce and minimize that. Anyway, this is mostly for engineers, you know, but there's some areas of improvement where we can improve the experience. Then let me go and like, yeah, so there's also error tracking. This is very similar to Sentry. They'll tell you occurrences of any particular thrown errors that we have. This will tell you, okay, you know, sometimes there's useful things in here of like bugs we need to fix. Feature flagging we're not quite using yet, but this will be very useful in the future when we want to show, like do A/B tests and things like that and show different users different features. This is a cool feature for that. Session replay is really powerful. This is probably the feature that is like scariest to people that see it the first time, but like it exists. A lot of people use these, and it's because I want to understand how people are playing with the product. So I can go to some anonymous user here, for example, and I can see exactly like how they're scrolling, where their mouse is, what are they clicking on? Are they clicking on things and they expect it to work, but it doesn't actually work? Things like that. So here, I'll just do one because this is probably Carl, right? So I can actually see, you know, what Carl's doing on this page, how long is it taking for things to load, things like that. This can be really helpful if there is a long session and you're seeing that they're playing, like in the future, if they're playing with the chat interface or they're playing with, you know, the SQL Studio or something like that, you can actually see what they're doing and see where they get stuck, see where they get frustrated. And in a lot of ways, this is actually more powerful, right, than doing traditional customer interviews. And then product analytics, this is the one where you probably want to pay attention because if you haven't done this before, there's a lot of parts to it. So we track a lot of events right now. We track page views, we track dead clicks, we track page leaves, we track anytime somebody writes to Supabase right now. It's currently just writing API keys, but in the future, we could also save, you know, dashboards or save, you know, like queries and things like that. Logins, API calls, etc. So, okay, I'm going to do Supabase right because it's like the best instrumented right now, but it's like the least interesting, but it's the best instrumented, so I'll use it. I can say, I want to see how often people are writing. And so I can actually graph like how people are writing. I can add filters. So in my Supabase write, there is metadata that tells me what table I'm writing to. So I can say, you know, the table name is API keys, right? And I only want to see writes to API keys. In the future, there might be other tables that we're writing to, and we can kind of see the performance there. Same thing with funnels. So you can say like, okay, I want to see when the funnel and the conversion funnel and the drop-off rates as they view a page, right? So here I can say the first step is I view a page, then I log in, user login, and then maybe create an API key where table name equals API keys, right? So now I'm going to create a funnel where I can see how many people, like how many people view our page to how many people log in to how many people are creating an API key. So the one area where you might get stuck sometimes is step order. Step order means like, do they actually have to strictly go in this exact order, which is better when you have like fine scoped mini actions in a particular page versus any order is like, okay, if they're coming back and forth and they move in different directions, then sometimes you just have to set it to be any order. And then, I don't expect a ton of data here because we only turned this on recently, but you can kind of see like how people are dropping off anyway. So that's the funnel. Retention is exactly what you would expect it to be. Et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, when we do, like right now, there's not enough interesting data because this is like relatively recent. But eventually, when we start collecting enough data, we'll want to start creating dashboards around this where we want to see, retention of API calls, for example. Like if they use the API, are they coming back for it? Or like conversion funnels in the user product. Let me take a pause here and see if anybody has any questions.
Super cool.
You mentioned, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier, Ray, that it had like support for notebooks. Do they expose any like tools in those notebooks that would like make us use them, or can we basically like consume the data from other places, create like our own dashboards? How's this integration?
Yeah, so there's two things, right? So one of the things that I just showed is you can go to, like, they have everything is in a warehouse. You'll see that like a lot of how we designed OSO, like we took inspiration from reading from their architecture, right? And so if you go to their SQL, you'll see that there are a lot of things that are probably pretty familiar to you. So you can compose SQL. They have an event table. They also have the ability to set up connectors so you can join things inside PostHog. That's already pretty powerful. They also give you the ability to do pipelines, right? So I can go from PostHog and pipeline data out. So we could create a BigQuery data set, for example, from this and expose things out. It's kind of up to us. Like, that's just kind of how data warehouses work. Is like you got to pick a home. So if you pick PostHog as the home, you can pipe data in, or you can just set up connectors and just do notebooks and sources that way. Or you can pipe data out and then do things in OSO land and in PyOSO and things like that. Obviously, there's going to be sensitive data that you're going to want to filter out before you actually expose it publicly. But yeah, does that answer your question? And then with notebooks, if you're choosing PostHog as your home, then you can do all the things that you would expect to do in here. So you should be able to, I think you should be able to do SQL queries, but also embed widgets or charts or things that are coming from the UX in a notebook.
Cool. Yeah, it answered my question. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions about PostHog? All right. You ready, Carl?
I'm ready. I'm actually going to start with showing some user analytics for all the world chain apps, because that's what I was working on now. So let me share my screen. I guess quick show of hands, how many people know what world chain is? Ray knows it. Javi knows it. Rohit knows it. Evan does not. Okay. Well, let me just give a quick introduction to what world chain is. It is basically first off, it's a layer 2. It's on Optimism. They have a way of verifying unique human identity using this thing called the orb. They launched their mainnet back in November, and they paired it with a mobile app. So basically, anyone who is using WorldChain is interacting through their mobile app and is a verified human. And More recently, they've been supporting developers to create what they call mini apps, where you can basically create a small lightweight app, which is then available to any users who have the World app. And there are 12 million people, according to their sources, and we've also verified this, that are kind of actively using this application and doing things on chain. We could have a long conversation about how this works. There's obviously been some ethical concerns about the retina scans that are being used. However, there's pretty strong cryptography ensuring that the personal data can never get out. They're using ZK proofs and pretty complex hardware to ensure that. This is also Sam Altman's other startup in addition to OpenAI. But the thing that we are interested in is looking at the apps that have applied to retrofunding. We can look at all their user metrics, and we now have a verified user model that we just did together with them. And the reason this happened is because when we did the first retrofunding round, the World Chain apps, they had a pretty poor performance relative to others because there was no way of identifying their users. And they made the argument that, well, we have more provable human users than any other network, and yet none of those are counting. We said, okay, well, show us the data. And they did that. They showed us a place where we could get the data that's required to verify the users. And we worked with them together on a model. We pushed it, and now we actually have the ability to look up the user analytics, and we've created metrics now that are based on those raw data sources. So again, this is a great example, I think, of them not just kind of complaining about things not working out, but actually showing us and helping create the models that were necessary to measure impact in the way that they wanted. So actually, I was sharing the wrong thing, but let me just quickly show you what they have. So they have all these different mini apps. Here's one example. Let me see if I can go back and get some others. Okay, yeah, so there are different mini apps. There are ones that are like payment related. There are some which are focused on gaming, etc. I don't actually know very much about any of these apps. I've never tried any of them. I haven't been verified myself. But what we did together with them is we kind of looked at the data, helped identify the right sources to create a verified user model. We created the verified user model, and now we can actually see how many users are coming through based on their definition of what a user is. And from when the mainnet launched in, I guess, September, October, they now have a total of 8 million active verified humans on their network, which is pretty amazing. That's by far the largest human network in any crypto ecosystem. And what I just did in 10 minutes before the call was I went in and looked at, of those users, how many are interacting with the project that's applied for retrofunding. Let's grab all those events and come up with some user analytics on how well those products are doing in terms of retaining their users. And so this is just one example, again, not very fancy, but here's one of the leading apps, and we can look at this is 30-day retention since when the app launched. And each of these represents a cohort of when they joined and what's been their 30-day retention since joining. It's pretty cool to see that it's actually been very, very high, I would say, much higher than what's probably typical for other apps. People are going in, and I think this is a UBI app. So people are going in and claiming basically at least once a month, but coming in and frequently interacting with it. And you can see that it is petering out a little bit, but these are pretty high retention numbers. And we could compare that with another one. I don't actually know what this project is. Let me just look at it. WorldPot. Okay, well, there you go. This is a newer project, so maybe that's not a great example. Here's one, I think. Okay. Yeah, so in general, retention does seem pretty high across the board, maybe because it's so easy to interact. But here's another project which has been a bit less successful in retaining users. And you can see the total number of users over here. Again, this is not very fancy, but it was a cool experiment just showing the power of being able to do this now that we have the data. And we can show these kind of analytics for any project, any team. And I think they're going to be psyched because last month they weren't really getting credit, and now they have this kind of user analytics. Plus, they're going to be having those count towards their rewards for this season of retrofunding. So really cool. Speaking of retrofunding, let me show the latest results that we have. So we closed things out yesterday, and I put together Hex Notebook just summarizing some of the results. This is actually something that I fed into Dot. I will show you how that works in a minute. But I said, okay, here are the results. Now give me some bullet points that I can use to explain the results to other people. So here are the top 10 on-chain builders. It's gone in, identified which metrics are most impressive, and done some additional research to explain what that product is doing. Again, I give it very, very little guidance, and this is what it came up with, which I think is pretty cool. So you can see here the top 10 on-chain builders, identifies ones that are new that weren't in the round previously. We have the same thing for dev tools. You can see there's one big new library that entered. The rest were the same. We can see the biggest gains, which projects moved ahead the most this month, which ones did the worst. And then this is a part where I gave it a bit more context, saying here are some of the under the hood changes that we made, which might affect things. And then there's a table here which shows the difference in rewards this month versus last month. The next thing we have here are a few tables that allow you to basically look up a project, and you can pick any metric. So let's take the world chain users as an example, or we'll do world chain events. So it's basically going to look at all the projects that are on world chain and show their data going back to November, I guess, yeah, the past 6 months or so. And you can see which ones are the biggest movers, any change from this month to last month. And if you want to, you can click and see the OP Atlas project page over here. That's it for the on-chain builders. And then for dev tooling, we have the same thing. We can see the projects that applied, which ones are new. There's a few high-level metrics based on how many people are using them as a dependency, how many package connections there are, how many developer connections, the total number of packages that they have in deps.dev, forks over the past year, stars over the past year. Those are the main kind of metrics that we've used to just give a sense of what the product is, how long the product's been around and how well established it is. And then we can come in here and we can actually simulate the rewards algorithm. So this is not going to produce the same results as you'd get from the algorithm, but it'll give you an idea. So let's just take a metric here like gas fees. Let's just focus on the biggest gas fee generators. And maybe we care about Rust. So we're going to look at, this is basically showing, okay, that actually wasn't that interesting. There weren't a lot of examples there. Let's go back to NPM. So this is basically showing, based on the amount of gas fees that have been generated across the superchain, what are the most popular NPM libraries in this case? And so, yeah, no surprises here. This represents many of the big projects that you might be familiar with. If you want to look at other libraries, which I think is kind of cool, so let's look at non-NPM. Let's drop this down to 0. Let's go to transactions. And we can see some other things here. Yeah, so libp2p, web3.py, Viper, IPFS, Go libp2p, a few other kind of Viper-related frameworks. And yeah, there you have it. And then if we come down over here, we can also see the developer graph. So we're also looking at any engagement from developers that are associated with on-chain builders. And we want to see what types of things they have done as a form of engaging with a dev tooling repo. So let's just look at ones that have forked a repo. There's kind of a time factor here as well. So it'd only look in the past, I think 6 months or 1 year. Let me just create a higher percentile. Oh, okay, we're still filtering, and actually we're not filtering anymore. Okay, so yeah, you can see which ones have been forked the most. Open Zeppelin contracts, a few others down here. VM, Noble cryptography, etc. So those are the dev tooling results. And then last, if you want to do a deep dive on how a product has performed this month versus last month, let's take Oro. That was the example that we gave a second ago. So they received slightly more last month, and we can try and understand why that is. So their actual number of addresses did go down, even though the reward algorithm became a bit more favorable for them. And then, yeah, we can see any other metric over here. And if we want to take a dev tool, let's take, let me find a good one. Let's take multicolor. So this is actually in both rounds. It's both an on-chain builder and a dev tool. We can see the changes. The main reason for things changing, actually, sorry, let me do create text. That's a good one. Okay, let's take this one. Okay, yeah, so you can see the differences. Not a huge amount. You can see the on-chain metrics, and then over here, oh, no package dependencies in that case, but we have the developer connections. Let's do one more. Let's try Wi-Fi. It's a good one. So this is a bridge. It has its own protocol, and then has an SDK, so others have used that. So you can see its own on-chain metrics, and then you can see other products that are using its NPM package and the total amount of gas generated by those projects over the past 6 months.
Is this all PyOSO backed?
That's the last part. So here's a little script for getting PyOSO.
Nice.
And here are the queries that are coming in. It's nothing. These are so short. That's it.
Cool. I mean, one of the things I noticed is like it's so much snappier than the previous versions that you had on BigQuery. It was like,
yes,
got to be powered by something else than BigQuery.
So I have a little magic thing here where I will cache things. Depending, I will decide whether to refresh or not, and I can set that and decide how long to cache it for. So I have cached everything, so it is going to be much faster than normal. But it is also faster. I've learned how to optimize things a bit more.
Cool. Where can we find these? Like, is this in the Kariba Hex team? Or
yeah, it's in the Hex team. I literally made this morning. So the point is also how easy it is now once you get familiar with PyOSO to make these kind of notebooks.
Well, it's just like this demo. I'm glad we're recording it. Like, we should share it with the OP Labs team. I'm curious, like, how have your engagements there been? Have you followed up with people and seen what their initial feedback is? And I know there's like a broader desire to like have a single source of truth for things like this. And I'm curious, like, how is that currently?
Yeah, so that's what we're discussing tomorrow. I think we're going to find out what the vibe is. I think it'll be very. I don't get the sense that people are kind of re-engaging. I think they're kind of checking stuff out, trying to answer stuff. I feel that we're going to have to go straight to Dot to get much more kind of regular engagement, or something like Dot. And maybe let me just show that right now, and that will be my final demo, and then we can discuss some of the next steps. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So actually, let me just zoom out. So this is how Dot works. What we have done is connected some of our MART models, which are on BigQuery. Right now, they don't support ClickHouse, so all we can do is BigQuery. And if you want to look at how they work, we basically have, actually, this is not a good one to use. Let's just take projects as a simple one. So we basically describe the fields that we care about. It takes a sample of data. Then we give it some additional context for how to use it. And some kind of gotchas. I've tried to give it some guidance on how to think about using this table. Like, for instance, really only use this for looking at metadata. And then if you go to time series metrics by project, it kind of explains the architecture of the table and the fact that you always need to be joining on metrics v0 and products v1. I think this line right here boosted performance by a significant amount. And then you can also come in and you can define relationships between different IDs. So that's pretty straightforward. There's also like the ability to give it context about your project and how to think about things. And then you can give it different skills as well. So these are some of the main skills that we're using right now. In general, the ones that I've been using the most are the visualizations and the reasoning. But I've also tried out the deep analysis and summary. I don't think I've done language processing yet. And then the way that this works is you can basically, if you want to evaluate things, so I can just chat, so I can ask it a question right now. We can try that out. But in order to set some benchmarks, you can create these evals, and you can basically, let me take an example here. So this was actually one that I did today, which previously was not working, and now it's doing really well. So the question is, which project has increased DeFi Llama TVL the most on any one chain in absolute terms in Q1 of 2025? So that is not like a very specific question. There's a lot of ways that you could try and interpret that. And so you can see basically its chain of thought here. Actually, this might not be the best one to illustrate the chain of thought, but it kind of goes in, does a CTE, knows the keyword search. I spent a lot of time kind of training it how to look for our keywords embedded in the metric names. It sets up the CTE. It gets some results over here. It does the time filter, and then it's basically getting to the answer over here, doing the absolute increase, and then finally giving us our result over here. And it visualizes it right now and gives you a small statement around it. So I think that's pretty awesome. Another example.
So right now, the timeout correct, clarification needed, incorrect tags, like where is that coming from?
So this is, I think, a bug. So I've been talking with our team about why this is. These ones right now, like I could probably just try running this again. Let's see if that works. So here's what the interface will look like. Very ChatGPT-like. Let's see what happens. So it should know how to do this very well right now. Yeah, it got it. Anybody else have a question they want to try? Oh, but Rohit, what's a question that you might have?
Sorry, could you click on explanation from the previous
Oh,
chat?
yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, not a whole lot here.
I see. And then, are you the one telling it whether it's correct or not? Like, what is that interface?
Yeah, so once it runs, you'll come in and basically evaluate it. So let me give you an example here. It kind of went in and it got stuck over here. So I came in and I gave it a comment, and now I need to rerun this, but it's been having some issues rerunning. I kept getting timeouts today, and it's in general been flaky with that. So if I go and run this again, it should now take this added context, but I think it's probably going to time out. We'll see if it's doing it.
What does the user interface look like when something was a correct answer, but now it's an incorrect answer?
I've never had that happen yet.
But do you have an intuition for what the UX looks like?
No, because right now, whenever I try and rerun something, so I give it more context and rerun it, it seems to fail rerunning that query. So what I've been doing is just kind of adding a new question each time, which isn't great. And I'm asking them like why that's the case. Yeah, I think this is a bug. So it's oh, okay, let's see. Did it get it? Oh, there we go. Oh, cool. All right, we got something.
Okay, and then it's up to you to verify that that's actually correct and then mark if it's correct or incorrect.
So you can verify two ways. One is just kind of looking at the result and saying, yep, this is good. Or you can actually give it a correct query, and it will deterministically compare the results and see if they're the same. And you can set a threshold, 95%, 100% accuracy, and then determine if it's correct based on that. I think I have an example of this.
I feel like that's probably going to be necessary to scale in the future, right? Because like long term, as we are adapting the agent framework, you're going to want to rerun every eval and just see like what changes, right? Without having to go in and verify everything manually.
Yeah, like here's an example where it did it, right? It didn't dedupe on the product sources. And so I kind of came in and corrected it by putting in a distinct here. But everything else was fine. And the results were the same. And the similarity was 90% just because of the duplication.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how far are we from connecting Dot and feeling good about, you know, somebody using it, like on Slack?
We should definitely start using it ourselves, right? So I'm ready to do that now. I think I just need to figure out how to get these models to run. So once they respond to my question, then we should definitely start using it internally. Yeah, Javi.
So I know there's like this Slack version. Do they have any SDK or anything? Because I think we would have a lot of value, you know, having it on Discord. And if it's in Slack already, it shouldn't be too hard to implement. So maybe that's something we should definitely ask.
Yeah. I think right now.
Yeah, I think it's just Slack.
Yeah.
I see.
That's fine. I mean, we have like an internal Slack that we can just start with before we connect it to the OP Labs connection. But I mean, I think I was more just like checking your vibe check on, you know, how good is it? Yeah. Right. Like, of course we should test it. I just mean like, you know, how annoying is it versus like, oh, this is like, you know, it's accurate like 80% of the time. So it's probably fine. And then when it fails, like, is it like catastrophic where it's like straight up hallucinates and gives me a bad answer, but I think it's good, or is it like obvious that it's bad?
I haven't had any hallucination issues. I feel like I'd like to get someone with fresh eyes on it because my expectations were so low because the first week it was so bad, and I spent time like getting it better. And so now I think it's awesome, but that's probably just because I feel like, you know, I can see the ROI of the time I put into it.
Yeah, I think this is where like maybe collaboratively we all just need to be adding more evals, right? Because like we just need to test it. And if we get to the point where we have hundreds of eval queries with associated SQL, you know, then we can really start to feel more confident about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we should do is just ask it questions, and then, you know, I can come in and look and decide, you know, which of these make good for good evals, or, you know, tweak them a little bit to be proper for an eval, and then we can do it that way. So you guys should just ask questions, and then I'll do the, you know, if there's one that you think is really cool or that's problematic, let me know, but I'll also kind of come in and do some hygiene on these.
Yeah, and just to share how I'm thinking about this right now, like I said, I was pretty upfront with them that like, hey, we build things in open source. We're gonna want to build more open source stuff. Like, I think this is the right place to start. Have a set of like, I'm thinking right now, like on the order of hundreds of evals that span a lot of different types of queries, and we'll start to see how Dot performs. And the challenge for the team would be, okay, let's translate this exact eval suite as a test benchmark over to Arise Phoenix, and with a set of techniques. And we've discussed this in the reading group already, right? There's a few intuitions that we have. One is, okay, if we go multi-agent, there's probably ways that we can improve the multi-agent architecture. There's probably ways that we can improve fine-tuning and potentially even use reinforcement learning to improve the performance of any individual model. And then specifically, as you know, Carl mentioned in the reading group, is like, because we are so domain specific, our evals, our data sets, our tuning can be very tailored towards the semantic model that we care about, as opposed to trying to build something generalized like they are. And I fully expect us to be able to build an open source model that outperforms. Like, if we can't, then like, you know, why even bother, right? Like, let's just use this. But I have a strong intuition that like it should outperform. And so those are kind of the sequence of steps. So I think we're currently at the step where I want Dot to be as useful as possible. I want them to succeed as much as possible. I want OP Labs to be using, like, us to have enough evals that we feel comfortable having OP Labs directly interact with it. And then simultaneously, we should be building something that performs better. Awesome. Super cool. I'm excited to see the progress. This is like, yeah, things are coming along.
I have a quick question, but Javi, do you have a question as well?
Oh no, I left it a mistake. My bad.
Anyways, I was wondering, Carl, does the chat have a conversational memory so you could continue your analysis building on top of your previous queries as well?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I stopped sharing my screen, right? Yeah, but it does.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So you can do a follow-up right now. Anyway,
Neat.
yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
All right. Rohit, you're up.
All right. Let me share my screen. Yeah, while this is coming up, so this was our first internal demo with the grants team at Stylus. For those who may not have heard of Stylus, it's on Arbitrum. It's basically allows developers to write smart contracts in languages that are WebAssembly compatible. And the grant has about 25 projects as part of the year-long engagement to improve developer engagement, build solutions within Stylus. This should be coming through in just a moment. So our role has been to work with these projects, index them. This is currently entirely based off of the developer activities in GitHub. I hope the screen's coming through. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Cool. I'll quickly run through what we built for them. There are a couple of good pieces of feedback that we heard as well. And so the next step is to take it to the broader group within the grants team and see how relevant and useful this can be for their bi-monthly evaluations. So as I said, there are about 25 or so different projects of different sizes. Some of these were spawned particularly to build for Stylus as part of this grant. Others are long-running projects that have opted in to build solutions around Stylus. So to begin with, the way this is set up, all of this is coming off of OSO. I've set up GitHub Actions to refresh it on once a week so that it doesn't rely on performance every time somebody refreshes these dashboards. So to start with, one of the things we wanted to highlight, and hopefully this starts to make more sense later in the grant lifecycle. Right now, most projects haven't hit their first milestones, and some may have hit at the most one milestone. But hopefully, what we're trying to show here is over time, as these projects get more engagement and have an active developer ecosystem, the green line here, which is these active developers for the cohort, starts to increase relative to the overall active developers in the Arbitrum ecosystem as tracked by projects in the OSS directory. And there is one line here, which is we also figured out projects that may not be part of the grant, but they're still dependent or using the Stylus SDK, using the SBOM model, and we are also charting that. So in a sense, as a grant operator, you could look at these three different snapshots and do like a comparative analysis. So as an example, which projects are not part of the grant but are showing high a developer engagement as an example. That's something that the last table on the right can answer. And then all the Stylus grantees are here in the middle table, and you could track their monthly growth or the lack of thereof in the snapshot. So that's where we start at the highest level to track active developer engagement. But then you can get more granular across these tabs. This is specifically looking at trend within the cohort group of 25 projects. So you can see if we track it over 12 months, there is some activity before Stylus started as well, which was around September last year. And these are projects that are already active in the ecosystem and are now part of the grant. And you can see some of the projects ramping up early into Q1 of 2025. And then just going forward, yeah, you could then get more granular in terms of some of the other GitHub metrics and compare and contrast over like a rolling 12-month basis. How these different projects compare in terms of developers or just number of issues closed and so on. I think one of the things we heard more clearly was when we look at individual projects, a lot of these projects might have multiple repositories, and not every activity or repository may be reflective of Stylus. So that's something that we're trying to put in as a feedback and pull in a more granular view for a project, which goes beyond just the org and highlights specific repos that are unique to Stylus and bubble up that information. We might also engage more closely with the project as they complete their milestones to surface that information back into the dashboards. But right now, all of the project-specific information here is at the org level, and you can just compare and contrast it over time in terms of development velocity or engagement with the community, and the overall project growth. One of the experimental tabs here that we will most likely enable it only for the grants team is an early warning system. So as an example, there's a configuration panel here that you can set after some experience with the grantees, certain triggers and certain thresholds that can trigger if the project's not particularly doing well over time. So as an example, if you tend to see a 10% drop in the active developer trend, you would want to know which projects those are, and if that condition is met, essentially the early warning system will help you bubble that up. But a lot of this will depend on some of the early experiences with the data in the program. So right now we intend to hide it from the broader set of stakeholders. This might be available for like a smaller group to play around, and might become more meaningful 3 to 4 months down the line when a lot of these projects would hit their first couple of milestones. Another interesting feedback that we heard was around the network analysis. So in the current stage, what this visual is trying to show is all the projects that are downstream of off-chain labs who are consuming the Stylus SDK. What are the top 100 upstream dependencies that they have, and how does that ecosystem track? But one of the inputs we also heard was as the Stylus grantees produce artifacts that downstream projects consume, there's definite interest in sort of visualizing that supply chain as well. So that's something I'm working on, pulling in downstream usage, either in terms of developers and users for packages that the Stylus grantees might be creating. Yeah, let me pause there. Yeah, this was our first stab at the demo. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have one question, which is like, it's awesome to see this back to back with what Carl showed and what you're working on. Like, I'm curious between Carl, Rohit, like, how do you guys feel about the future of something like Dot producing something like this? Because, and I mean this in like an empowering way, right? Like, I see a world where in the future, Rohit can go from servicing 2 ecosystems to, like, if you have a Dot army behind you, you could service 5 to 10 ecosystems, you know, with less work, and you can focus on the sales and the landing of the contracts and the customer service and the translation into an AI agent and some amount of the CRM and like project ecosystem community management, right? Which is like where, you know, we're going to need human beings for the foreseeable future. Like, but it just really accelerates the ability for anybody on the sales side to be able to service a lot of different ecosystems quickly. Curious, like how far you think we are from something like that.
It feels like a matter of time, especially for Stylus, which is more of a reactive grant. The money is already paid out, and the grants team is just monitoring, I think, for exceptions and outliers. I think 80% of this should be automated by the AI in terms of what's needed. The 20% are going to be episodic analysis and questions and deep dives based on exception data. I think that's where either it's a chat interface or something else would be tremendously helpful. And And especially like this is a well-scoped sort of grant, which is only focused on GitHub metrics. It should be even a lower hanging fruit for AI relative to some of the more off-chain plus on-chain ecosystems like OP.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I feel would be a really fun feature to ship would be go back to that the project deep dive or something, right?
Yeah.
Or the risk, yeah, even this one, right? So here you've already given a context. Here's the project I care about. Here's some of the things. And you could ask a very, very specific question. And I think you would be able to get some really interesting things, even now.
Right.
Because you've already defined the time period, you defined the types of metrics that you care about, you defined the project, you've told it where to look. And now you could just go laser specific and say, okay, like, what are the names of the new developers who joined recently, right? And what other products are they contributing to, et cetera. Like, what language is this repo in? And you could get answers to those things in seconds.
Yeah. I think what's really exciting about this is, like, I feel like there's something, one of the things we talked about in ETH Denver is, like, how do we get 10x accelerators, right? Like, as a team, how do we build things where as a team, we do 10x more than we did previously? Like, this is another one of those examples where I feel like there could be something, I don't know, the features within grasp.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was going to say, just in the context of our roadmap, just to share a little bit more about how I think about these things, like, I don't want to put a ton of time on this. Sorry. I think we should be aggressive with how quickly we get there. Like, I see a world where Q2, we've done all of that. Like, we have Q2, we have Dot set up. It's answering questions for Optimism folks or whoever. We have our own agent system that I think I would suspect would perform better. And by Q3, like, I don't want, like, we can continue tuning these things. Of course, we will continue tuning these things. But by Q3, we're starting to focus on other agents as well. And so I think it's relatively, in the grand scheme of things, relatively low-hanging fruit to get to a world where, I think, Carl, you described it as robot mode, right? Like, we get to robot mode for retrofunding by Q2. And by Q3, we're actually focusing on robot moding other things like grants council or perspective related things like mission requests. It's like it'd be a very different set of problems of, like, what are the things that you'd be looking for to assess and evaluate them. But on the retrofunding side of things, I think we're actually, like, this might be overly reductive, but I see the end.
Um, 100%. I see. So, like, in a world where the data stays the same, I see the end. I think where one other kind of path in the road to consider is, I'll just use a very small example, right? So Rohit, you basically said the next question that stylists want to know is, what are all the other products using? If you were to look in depths.dev and identify all of the libraries that are also using Stylus SDK, let's index their repos and get things about those developers and stuff like that, right? So I'd love to be able to basically schedule indexing jobs directly from. Oh, okay. See, Ray. Can we keep the meeting? What's that?
You guys stay on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to be able to schedule the next set of repos that we want to index or create the next set of projects basically on the fly through some kind of UI. And that could be anything from saying, let's add projects that are also using Stylus, to, I think, the question that Pruitt asked previously, which is, oh, I want to categorize these projects because I know something about them. So I think these ones are new projects where this grant makes a really big difference, and these are mature projects. So ideally, being able to create, like, arbitrary categories or collections, and then using that to, like, potentially in our case, configure collections or create new project entities that need to be indexed, or tell Dagster what we needed to do, etc. I don't know, Javi, I feel like you've thought about this a bit. I'm not sure if you're still listening.
Yes, I'm listening. I think that it makes a lot of sense. It's something that we should definitely explore. And yeah, we're doing like so many, things in the bleeding edge that yeah, it snowballs, and I just want to do everything.
Cool. I think the other thing that will be fun is trying to onboard new data sets. So we could say, here's a data set, here's a new source of dependency data, right? Figure it out, connect it, and now let's take the same metrics that we already have and run them on this one.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's exciting.
All right, anything else that we didn't demo?
I mean, we have the new funding data set. I think that's some cool charts would have been, nice to demo. I should have prepared that in retrospective. But other than that, I think it was really complete demo day.
Next week.
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Ciao, ciao.
Nice work. See you guys.